On a day when the Supreme Court has denied bail to both Sharjeel Imam and Umar Khalid, I'm joined by Harish Salve, the one and only legal voice that can explain which side the Supreme Court has taken this call from. Mr. Salve, thank you very much for speaking to Times Now. The Supreme Court has delivered a detailed order denying bail to Sharjeel Imam and Omar Khalid while allowing bail to 5 others. It's drawn a clear distinction between the accusations for Sharjeel and Omar as against the others. How do you read the court's decision?
Look, there is a general discussion as far as the law is concerned on Article 21 and the how the provisions of the UAP have been reconciled with Article 21. Beyond that, it's yet another case where the court has not considered it appropriate to grant bail. And it happens all the time, that depending on the nature and gravity of the offense, depending on the level of involvement, depending on the likely risk to society, if a person is granted bail, the court has various considerations which takes into account. And you must realize the Supreme Court doesn't give reasons beyond a point because the trial is yet to even commence. The Supreme Court doesn't want to prejudice the case of a accused, because anything said by the Supreme Court will hang very heavy in the trial.
Mr. Salve, the court has clarified on multiple occasions in the order that this is not a judgment on merits. However, even while not going into the merits of the case, it says there is enough evidence on a prima facie basis at this juncture to deny bail to both Sharjeel and Omar Khalid. In that context, do you believe the order is reasonable? Because there are voices that are questioning this incarceration.
Well, I've read the judgment, and in today's society in which we live, inciting people to resort to this kind of behavior, I believe, from what little I've discerned from the judgment and what I've heard of the submissions, certain speeches were made, and this was a well-concerted action. It's good that the court has denied bail to those of the top and differentiating the cases of those who were at a lower level, not functioning at a sort of a pan or a global basis, but at local levels. The perfectly sensible classification and matters of granting bail. The second thing which the court has noticed, and I wish all media channels pick that up considering the global noise which is being made about this nonsense. I don't know how people in other countries get a right to comment on our judicial system. If we start commenting on their judicial system, they will go red in their face. Anyway, considering that a lot of noise has been made about this, there is a finding of the trial court, of the High Court and of the Supreme Court now that the accused have been causing delays. There are a large number of accused. We know how tag teaming is done. On one occasion, one accused is not there, another occasion, another accused is not there, and unfortunately, a criminal trial cannot go on unless all the accused cooperate. So on the one hand, you hear this clamor about why his case is not being heard, and every time the case came up for hearing, something strange happens. Applications are withdrawn, you go back to trial court, go back here, go back there. That's fair enough. Those are all forensic tactics. But don't accuse the system of unduly delaying it and thereby suggesting that because he belongs to a particular community or because his ideology is not palatable to the government, he is being treated badly. That's a complete nonsense.
In fact, the court has agreed that the prosecution's own case was never about Omar Khalid or Sharjeel Imam disagreeing with the state or that their ideology differed. The prosecution's case has only been about the actions of these individuals threatening national security. It also says that their role was not merely episodic, but something that involved a sustained pattern, including a series of meetings and interactions that amounted to threatening public order.
See, that's the whole point. Giving one speech here. What the attempt sometimes is to try and break it up and say, okay, look at this speech and look at this speech in isolation, or look at another speech. Okay, maybe I used one wrong word, or maybe I got a little carried away by my own eloquence. That's not the correct approach. What the police appears to have put together is a dossier of speeches, public communications, private communications, and which clearly, according to the Supreme Court judgment, prima facie establishes that there was a game plan behind this. And that game plan was to disrupt what is called the even tempo society. And these are, today we live under challenges of all kinds. Today, the biggest challenge which we face day in and day out, and we are hearing people say this, oh, if Nepal can have it and if Bangladesh can have it, why not us? So we have to be very careful. You've seen regime changes. You've seen 4 days ago, a country A walks into country B and picks up its president and takes him back without, that's a novel way of extraditing somebody, using your military. Now you're seeing all this go on in the world. India has to protect itself. And we have to take all this very carefully. We can't start blinking at all this, saying these are misguided youngsters or these are some people with a strained ideology.
Has argued, Mr. Salve, that these two were not involved physically in the riots, that they did not indulge in the clashes since they were not there on the spot, that they were not present on location. The court has countered both Umar Khalid and Sharjeel Imam on all of these points, saying that mere physical absence does not mean that there was no role in orchestrating or conspiring towards what happened.
Was Dawood Ibrahim present when the bombs went off? What is the, remind me of the name of the Pakistani whose brother was killed in Operation Sindoor?
Masood Azhar. Yes, Masood Azhar.
Was he present when Kasab and Mahmood Azhar, was he present when Kasab and that gang attacked Bombay? Who's more guilty? The ones who indoctrinate, plan, arm, and unleash terrorists, or the terrorists themselves? And how do you say that if you have to kill the snake, you have to cut its head off? And these are opposite analogies here. So the court has rightly considered this prima facie to be very strong. A message has gone that if this is the nature, the court takes these allegations extremely, extremely seriously.
Critics of the order, as well as those who have defended Omar Khalid and Sharjeel Imam for all of the 5 years, have repeatedly emphasized that bail is the rule and jail is the exception. And you've held that view several times. But the Supreme Court should follow that principle, is what critics now are saying. How would you respond to that argument? The prolonged incarceration, they argue, before trial is a violation of rights.
So let's deconstruct it. Bail is the rule. Jail is the exception. Is very sadly, it's a salutary principle, and very sadly, the Supreme Court has drifted away from it. But that's a discussion for another day. There are certain laws where jail is the rule, bail is the exception. It's in the IPC. It used to be in the IPC. If it was a 302 charge, then you got bail only if you were able to show that there was no case against you. So, under all the anti-terror laws, under the drug law, under all these laws, bail is not the rule. The rule is you continue in jail unless the accused is able to show that there is no case against him. So this bail is the rule, jail is the exception, has undergone statutory modifications, and they've all been upheld under Article 21. So let's start from there. So this rhetoric doesn't get you anywhere. The second is, yes, of course, prolonged delay in a trial, a prolonged incarceration pending trial is a violation of human rights, but provided the delay is caused by apathy of the state or structural constraints. The Supreme Court has said, yes, there are some structural constraints. There have been occasions, but the Supreme Court's finding is that it's a very complex case to investigate. This is not an ordinary case. It's a very complex. There are a large number of actors to separate the grain from they say to separate the grain from the chaff. As required the police, I was seeing the dates. The incident happened in February. By November, the first charge sheet was filed. So this is not one of those cases of prolonged delay in filing a charge sheet. In a case of this complexity, and how many people have died? You know, how many people have died? How many have been injured? And the cost which the city and all this was to do tamasha when President Trump was visiting. So that you feed into we have heard now anti-India narrative coming from very high quarters. So that's all right, but that's again a debate for another day. But today, in this sort of a situation where even political leaders appeal to other countries saying, come and interfere in India, we have to take these narratives very seriously. And if you have crossed the line, if the Supreme Court says this is a very serious violation of the unlawful act, I think that's a strong message.
Finally, Mr. Salve, you pointed to the comments that have been made to amplify the narrative around this case. The likes of Zohran Mamdani have weighed in as well. Do you believe these comments are an outcome of ignorance about India's judicial system, or do you believe there are vested interests at play that seek to cast aspersions about our judiciary by claiming it is compromised or aligned with the ruling dispensation's view?
There's a third very important factor which let's not make any mistakes. Politicians all over the world share certain common attributes, and it suits Mr. Mamdani's go with the flow approach in these matters to support that, yes, to support the narrative that, oh yes, it is so terrible in India, minorities are badly treated. This is a constant refrain we hear. Recently, somebody showed me a message going around saying a large number of churches have been burnt in December around Christmas time. I checked all Indian newspapers, nobody mentioned it. So these kind of things go on today, and this kind of narrative goes on. And then you have friendly senators whom our own people cultivate, who all the time raise issues in the US Senate against India. So there is an attempt to build a narrative. And then finally, don't ever underestimate the American deep state and what they have done in our neighboring countries. So it's Mr. Mamdani, it's not for me to comment, but it's to me, if he talks about my country, then I will say, yes, he's going with the flow. It suits his political narrative to say all this. And does he care about the truth of what he's saying? No, he doesn't.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harish Salve, for joining me here on Times Now.